Is our life. So there you go. If I missed you, we're on the third word today of our 7-word series of what changed our life, and these small words that make a huge impact. And we've started off with no, and we talked about yes last week, saying yes to who God says I am, and no to who the world may define me as, those labels, whatever it is, saying yes to who God says I am. And then also saying yes to His plans, because sometimes our plans and His plans don't line up. Sometimes where He's leading us, we don't want to go because we see what's ahead, we don't like how it feels, or we're in the middle of it. Maybe we said yes to that plan, it sounded good, but then all of a sudden in the middle of it, we're like, okay, surrender flag, can we change course? And so it's just continuing to say yes over and over and over. God, I want to be faithful to you wherever you lead, one step at a time. Today's word we're going to talk about is enough. And before I kind of get into that, I want to make a statement, and it seems so simple, but it has a lot of weight to it. The most important thing in our life is our personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And so that's the basis for this word today. The basis of it is the most important thing that we can achieve, the most important status that we can have. The most important possession that we can possess is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's where it starts. Because if we don't know Him, if we don't have that secured, if we don't know that we know Him as our personal Savior, it's not about where I'm going to spend eternity. It's not about looking forward to, well, I want to know Him so I can get to heaven. What I'm saying is, heaven is a long ways away. What I'm putting emphasis on is, I want a personal relationship with Him here so that I can enjoy Him here, because I need Him here as much as I need Him there, right? So there's not any hardships in heaven, so I need Him more here. So let's not focus on what's to come. Let's focus on the personal relationship that we have here. And that's the most important thing in our life. In fact, Philippians 3:8, Paul speaks to this. He says, I count everything as loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. And remember, he's writing this from a prison cell. For His sake, that's Jesus, I have suffered the loss of all things and count them as rubbish, in order that I may gain Christ. So, bottom line, he sees Jesus as his ultimate prize. He sees Jesus as his ultimate treasure. He says, you know what, I've had all the status, and he had. He had all the knowledge, he had all the education, he had the status, he had everything behind him. Everyone looked to him, and he was on this crusade. He had this purpose and this mission in life, and he was going to eradicate all Christians. That's the mission that he was on, and still until God interceded, and he had an encounter with Jesus that transformed his life, and it changed the course of his life, and it changed the course of history. And then he finds himself suffering in prison. He goes from this to this. And he says, I was on top when I was against God. I felt like I had the world in the palm of my hand. And then all of a sudden, I give my life to Christ, and now I'm suffering in the prison cell. And from Paul's perspective, and you have to figure this out yourself, and I have to figure this out myself, he realized that he was better off here with Jesus, with everything seemingly falling apart, than he was with here when everything seems to be in control, right? Jesus was his treasure. And he said, all this is fading. All this is pointless. This is what life is. And so I don't know who needs to hear this for just a second, is maybe you feel like, man, I gave my life to Jesus, and I've been doing this church thing, I've been doing this Christianity thing, but this life seems harder than the other. Why is that? It's because you were going with the grain, right? You were going with the grain. The enemy was happy with you, so there was no resistance. And now that you're going against the grain, you're going against the nature of the culture, you're going against the world, and all of a sudden now there's resistance. And so if there's resistance, what does that mean? It means you're on the right course. Most important thing you can have is your personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ is going to lead you down trails that are filled with obstacles and hardships. Matthew 13:14, Jesus shares this parable, and he says, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found, and he covered it up. And then in his joy, he goes and he sells all that he has and buys that field. So you think about it like this. 15 minutes earlier, would this guy would he have gone and sold everything he had, all of his possessions, and then come back and bought this land that was seemingly worthless and had little value? Would he have done that 15 minutes before he found that treasure? No. What was the difference? Because once he found that treasure, he was willing to give up everything. Why? Because he saw the value of that treasure. The value of that was far greater than what he had. And so at some point, we've got to see that we are not enough without Jesus, and that we're more than enough with Him. And it all begins with me not just praying a prayer and getting to know Him. It's all about walking step in step with Him. Because even as Christians, and this is what we're going to talk about today, even as Christ's followers, there are times where we continue to look back or we continue to compare and we say, what if I had that? Because I'm not happy and I don't seem to be fulfilled. I don't seem to be enough without what they seem to have. The enemy, he may be causing you to live out what the culture views as enough. Because if there's a word in this series that's counterculture, it's this one. It's enough. And here's what it looks like. I am busy enough. At some point, we've got to say, I've got to say no to some stuff so I can say yes to some better stuff. I have enough. I am enough. I don't need this specific circle of friends. I don't need this person to friend me. I don't need them to follow me. I don't need them to retweet me. And some of this is over your head, some of y'all's heads, right? It's okay. All right, some of them understand this. And so I'm enough without all that. I'm enough with who I am. And once we clearly define what's enough, and we're the only ones who can do that for ourselves. Once we clearly define who is important in our life, who's speaking life into us, what's bringing fulfillment in our life, once we define who makes us enough, then we're going to find freedom. We're going to find our value. Let me give this disclaimer because some of you are like, man, you're talking about enough, and I know where this is going. You're a preacher, and you're going to tell us to give up stuff and sacrifice stuff for the kingdom, right? That's part of it. What I want to say, though, is before we go any further is there's nothing wrong with having nice new things. Are you hearing me? There's nothing wrong with having nice new things. The problem is when the nice new things come along that we can't afford, that we're sacrificing things we need for the things we want, and then we get overwhelmed. It's when we don't feel satisfied and we feel discontent with what we have and we think, well, this isn't enough, that's the problem. And so it's not about not having the nice car. Don't feel guilty because you just bought a new car or you just bought a new wardrobe. Don't feel guilty about that unless you swiped it and you don't know how you're going to pay for it, okay? That's when there's a problem. And so if you're okay with what you have, you can afford what you have, and it's okay, then we're good. If it's not, then that's a whole other time, and it's something you need to work through. So what leads us toward discontentment? Let's answer this question if you're taking notes. Number one, how we view stuff. What leads to discontentment is how we view stuff. When we begin to compare our old stuff to someone's new stuff, we view our stuff differently. Isn't this amazing? Rented this car. Ryan and I went to a conference in Atlanta a couple weeks ago, and we're happy with the vehicles. God has blessed us. We've got a couple nice, dependable vehicles that we're happy with. And then all of a sudden we rented this car, and I can't remember what kind it was. All I know is the first time I put it in reverse, you know what happened? Some of you have newer vehicles, right? So you see the car from an aerial view. And so the camera isn't just showing you you're backing up. It's showing where you are from the top. So it was almost like this drone was on top of us, videotaping us from the top and showing us where we were. And so you're backing up and you're like on top of the car and you're playing a video game almost. And you're like, I'm going to back up here and I see this. And I was like, this is amazing. And the first thought I had was, my car doesn't do this. Anybody with me? My car doesn't do this. And then all of a sudden I get in my car, we get back to the airport, Ryan, and I back it up and I put it in reverse. And what was I expecting to see? I was expecting to see hover cam, right? I was wanting to see hover cam. I want to see my car from the top view and make sure I wasn't just not seeing what was behind me, but I want to see everything around me. But all I got was a little bitty camera, right? And we get spoiled in that, don't we? Because we used to have to do this number, right? But now we just do this number. And then some of you may have a vehicle where you just press a button and it just backs up and parks for you, all right? So I'm not envious of you. That'd be cool to have, all right? Here's the deal. We are so content when what we have compared to someone else, we feel like it's a greater value. But once we begin to look at someone else and we think that's better, all of a sudden we begin to look at our stuff as not enough. So again, it's a matter of perspective. It's a matter of how I see my ride, how I see my stuff, how I see my house, how I see how it's laid out, all my furniture and all that. Men who trap animals in Africa for zoos in America say that one of the hardest animals to catch is the lemur. For the Zulus of that continent, however, it's simple. They've been catching the agile little animal with ease for years. The method the Zulus use is based on knowledge of the animal. Their trap is nothing more than a melon growing on a vine. The seeds of this melon are a favorite of the lemur. Knowing this, the Zulus simply cut a hole in the melon large enough for the lemur to insert his hand to reach the seeds inside. The lemur will stick his hand in, grab as many seeds as he can, and then start to withdraw it. This he cannot do. His fist is now larger than the hole, and the lemur will pull and tug, screech, and fight the melon for hours. But he can't get free of the trap unless he gives up the seeds, which he refuses to do. Meanwhile, the Zulus sneak up and nab it. For some of you, that's the saddest thing you're going to hear all day, okay? And so we're going to move on from that. The whole point of that is, if we're not careful, we fall for the trap of the enemy. The enemy sets it up and says, all right, we'll get there. You can get that. But what's it going to cost you? It's going to cost you massive debt. It's going to cost you just feeling overwhelmed. It looks good now, but man, when it's going to wear out. And again, it's not about being against nice new things. It's not about it being against that. It's, if I can't reach my hand in and grab that and pull it out with it, then I've got too much. And the enemy knows that. Is there something in my life that I need to let go? Is there something? Is there something I'm wanting that I need to let go of that desire? Because it's going to be a trap. If you're not enough with what you currently have, then you're not going to be enough with more. Ben Franklin said this: contentment will make a poor man rich, while discontentment will make a rich man poor. Secondly, what leads to discontentment is how we view stress. We're going to always have more opportunities than we can say yes to. There's always going to be something to do to fill our calendars. We're always going to be busy. And just let's face it, as much as me as a pastor, as I've tried to resist it and fight it, the idea of being busy is normal. The problem is sometimes is what we're busy doing. What's that costing us? What's the cost and the price tag on it? And so there's always going to be stress in our life. And it's healthy. There's healthy stress. When we've created margin in our calendars, our finances, our family, our jobs, and our hobbies, we begin to create margin in that, and what we're doing, then that stress is good because we need a project to look forward to. We need someone to help. We need to be doing something. We need to be active. There needs to be something beyond today to look forward to press on toward. We need our jobs. We need our careers. We need these things. We need the hardships. They're making us depend on others and making us depend on God. And so there's stress in life, and that's just part of life. But I would say to you today, because I think it's relevant to many here today, is to beware of technology. How dependent we are. In fact, there's a new syndrome, and it's called this: the phantom pocket vibration syndrome. And what they say is it affects 90% of students. I don't know what percentage of adults, but I would throw myself in this, okay, as we get to the signs in just a second. And what happens is in this syndrome, it means that you think your phone is vibrating or buzzing in your pocket, and you go to check it, and it isn't. Because you have this anticipation that somebody is texting me, somebody is calling me, and there's something that happens, some movement in your mind, and all of a sudden you check it, and nothing's going on. So while you've got it, you may as well open up and play a game or whatever, right? And so, phantom pocket vibration syndrome. And so I began to kind of work on this, to do some research. What's 4 signs you may have a cell phone problem? This has nothing to do with 4 signs you may be a redneck, okay? That's that list. But it's pretty close, all right? So 4 signs you may have a cell phone problem. First of all, you take it to bed with you. Some of you are like, what is that? It's not just about going and charging it on your nightstand, which is absolutely normal, okay? Because many don't have home phone lines anymore, right? And so that's your emergency contact. Pull it, we get it. What we're talking about here is when we take it to bed and we snuggle with it like that teddy bear we had when we were a kid. And some of you laugh because you're like, there are some in the room that you don't go to bed without that cell phone cuddled up, all right? It's next to you, okay? You practice the art of secretly texting while maintaining eye contact. I just have to go with this. Can anybody do this? Somebody doesn't want to own it because of what I just set it up as, right? An addiction. You can text. You're talking. Some of you are doing it now, right? Okay, so we've got some ownership starting to happen. Not that you're feeling guilty. I'm sure my wife could do this, all right? So it's this. You're having a conversation, but you're having a whole nother conversation, right? And it's happening, okay? So you have that skill, that talent. Here's where we get real personal, okay? You feel bummed out when you forget to bring it into the bathroom with you. I debated on that one, but it was so worth it. Let me just move on. And then the last sign is you check it during business meetings, dinners, and sermons at church. Now, I know those of us that are connected to fantasy football, there are Sundays when you forget to change your lineup. And you just have to check it. You know, nothing's going on. Maybe the offering's being passed. But my ushers see you. They see you checking your phone. I'm just having fun with you, right? But really, we are so attached sometimes, and you see it. You're going to go out to eat maybe this after church eventually when the preacher's done talking, right? And so when you go out to eat, you're going to see this happen. And in my family, we do it too. There's going to be times where you pick up the phone and you're with people that you love and you care about, and in the midst of that, those people that you love and care about, you're going to pull your phone out. Somebody texts you, or you're just, it's not that you're bored with the conversation, it's just that we're addicted to it, and we're held in bondage to it. And so what I would say to all that is, if we do not gain control of technology, if we do not gain control of it, then it will gain control of us. And what it does is there's this stress that begins to overwhelm us in our life that we feel like we can't ever detach. That's what technology does. That's what that addiction looks like. We feel like the world is doing something, our friends are doing something, and we want to know what they're doing. That we're not content enough with who we're with. We're not content enough to be where we are. We just have to see what everybody else is up to. I don't know where that lands with you, but I know it hits me between the eyes at times. Being content, number 3. How we view status. I'm going to spend a ton of time on this, but I'll just say it like this. If you're not enough with who you are now, your position at work, your status in life, whatever it is, then you're not going to be enough with whatever status you're seeking after. That group of friends that you feel like, man, I'm just not enough if I'm not in that group of friends. I'm not hanging out with them. I'm not dating them. I'm not with them. Or I don't have this many kids. I don't have this many activities. I'm not on that team. I didn't make that sale. All these sorts of things. Whatever status that is that you've projected out there and says, well, this will make me happy. This, if I could get to this amount of money in my savings, this amount of money in my retirement, this. If I could just get to that status, then I'll be happy. What I would say to you is those are great goals, and there's nothing wrong with having worldly goals. There's nothing wrong with setting that status and says, I want to work toward that job. I want to be full-time at this. I want to do this. I want to reach this goal. There's nothing wrong with that, but understand that that may become the pursuit. That may become your only vision, and goes back to the most important thing that I can accomplish, the most important thing I can possess in this life is not a status. It's not an achievement. It is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. So, if you're wondering if you're discontent, I'll give you a few warning signs of discontentment. Irritability. It's just small things seem to set you off. Loss of passion. The things that you used to be passionate about, you just can't find the energy. Loss of joy. You just don't feel like you can get excited about anything. You feel like there's just too much negativity. You're critical of yourself. You're allowing the criticism of others to just zap you. And then there's a couple of big ones here. Skimming over relationships. If we find ourselves where we're just kind of the surface in the relationships, we don't have a relationship in our life that we're really getting down dirty with. We're not being held accountable in our spiritual life. We're not being held accountable with our finances. We're not being held accountable with how we spend our time. If we don't have a relationship or a community or someone in our life that we're opening up our heart to, we're sharing our deepest fears, we're sharing our deepest, just whatever, our doubts. If we don't have someone in our life that we're opening ourselves up to, trusting that they would love us and they would help us right where we are, then it may be a sign that we're just kind of discontent, that we're constantly reaching beyond and we're just kind of skimming over those relationships. And then finally, we're wanting to escape. We just want to retreat. We may retreat alone. We may retreat to an addiction. We may retreat to something we feel like that's going to bring fulfillment. But it goes back to the bottom line and the basis of all this and the foundation of it is the most important thing I can have is my personal relationship with Jesus. And a big reason we face and we may feel discontent in life is because we have put our personal relationship with Jesus over here. And we begin to pursue life instead of pursuing Him who gives life. So, there's this visual, and I'm not going to do this every week because I can't draw, okay? I promise you that. So, we all have this life that we're living, right? And so, let's just imagine our life. All right, that's the best one out of all the ones I practiced all week, okay? So, this is life. Imagine your life as a bucket or a cup in some ways. Every life bucket has these holes. And they drain us. I don't know what's draining you, okay? You may have different things that drain you. For some of you, being social drains you. Being around people. You're an introvert by nature, and so being in a social setting, okay? One of the reasons we don't do the meet and greet time, let me just kind of let you peek behind the curtain, is because there's so many people that are just, hey, I'm going to have to talk to somebody. I'm going to have to, so I don't. Some of you may be relieved today to show up to church. You mean I don't have to go up and shake a stranger's hand? Okay, so congratulations, we love you. Okay, we're not going to force you to interact. Okay, and so there's some of you are drained by a social setting. You go to a party, you go to some place, and it just completely drains you. There's some, let me be careful with this, kids, okay? There's some of you, your kids are draining you, not just your pocketbook, right? They're draining you. You love them, you enjoy them, but there's seasons in every kid's life. It's the terrible twos, the terrible teens, the terrible 20s, and the list goes on. So you just kind of go through those phases, and it's nothing against kids at all. It's just there's different seasons with those kids. They just drain you. And draining doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. It just is going to drain your energy and maybe a little bit of your money. Now, there's a couple of more on here to make sure I get these right. Hardships. Life is filled with reality that there's going to be things in life we're going to have to go through that are going to be hard. It's tragedy. You didn't expect to lose that job. You didn't expect to lose that account. You didn't expect to lose that loved one. All these things, there's hardships, and they're going to drain you emotionally. They're going to drain you spiritually. And then there's criticism. It doesn't matter what you do. You know there's always going to be somebody that's going to come along if you ask enough people, and they're not going to like the way you do what you do. They're going to agree with everything that you agree with. And whether or not you ask them for their opinion, they're going to give it anyway. And there's going to be people in their life that they're going to criticize us, and they're going to drain us a little bit. And so the good thing is we have things that are going to fill our life as well. And so just as much as our kids, right, can drain us in different seasons, in different times, I believe that our family, kids included, can fill us. And they should fill us. We begin to see, okay, this is all great. It's all from a different perspective, because taking them around the ball games and keeping up with things and how much things cost, you know what? This time in life, I'm going to look back if I'm not careful, and I'm going to miss out on it because I've been complaining about all that. I just want to enjoy it. I want to invest in them, and I want to enjoy this time. I want to cheer them on, not so they can get the big hit or make the big shot. Yeah, those things will be cool, but if they never do any of that, I just want to enjoy them enjoying what they enjoy. And so family should fill us. We're at church, right? And so the spiritual answer, which is the big answer, is God should fill us. And we've got to create time for that. Just like we've got to create time for family, we've got to create time for God to fill us. What's filling my life? Because life is going to drain me. There's going to be things in life that are going to drain me. What's going to fill me? Community is going to fill me. There's something about gathering around with people that are going to encourage me. They're going to hold me accountable. They're going to put my hardships. They're going to put the criticism. They're going to put whatever season I'm in with my family. They're going to put the social part of it. They're people that I enjoy spending time with. They're people that are going to stretch me. There are people that are going to love me. There's people that are going to encourage me. What is filling? Who is filling my life? If there's people in my life that are criticizing me, if there's joy suckers in my life, they're always going to be there on some level. But I've got to also fill my life with people who are going to breathe life and speak life in me. And then I want to have a little fun with this one, because this one fills my life. Bluebell. So whatever fills your life, right? Whatever absorbs your life, whatever drains your life, what is it? What is it? Because we're all carrying this bucket. And no matter how many times you try to plug the holes, there's going to be another hole. There's going to be another hole. So let me wrap it up with Psalm 23, 1 through 4. Because only God can provide enough. Only God can provide enough. The most important thing I can do in my life, I can possess in my life, I can strive toward is my personal relationship with Jesus. So let's look at the shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. Let me kind of stop there. If He is the one guiding you, you are His sheep, and you're following the good shepherd, because a sheep is going to follow the shepherd. Whether it's a good shepherd or an imposter shepherd, the sheep is going to follow. Thankfully, we have a good shepherd. And how we know that we're following the good shepherd is when we spend time with the good shepherd. And then what's going to happen is we're leading and we're following him as he's leading us. Then he's going to lead us into places and we're going to feel fulfilled. We're going to feel satisfied because he's leading, and what he's given us, who he's given us, is enough. And we realize, because we're with him, that we have all we need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. I love that picture of that I can imagine these seasons and these times in life where the shepherd leads us through times of rest. And we have to kind of carve that out. We have to trust him for that. There's days in your life when you need to create space and margin to rest. You need to find some comfortable setting, whether it's your house or with people that you love, taking a trip, whatever the case may be. You need to find space and create space to rest. And the Good Shepherd is leading you there. It shouldn't all be busy. It shouldn't all be hectic. It leads us beside peaceful streams. And He renews my strength. I would ask how many of you feel weary at times, but I know the answer. All of us. Only following the Good Shepherd, only spending time with Him will renew my strength and renew my perspective. He guides me along the right paths. He shows me the clear steps, where I'm supposed to be going if I follow Him. And I'm pleasing Him. In fact, it says, bringing honor to His name. And here's the part I want to camp on as we wrap this up is, even though, so he's talking about following Him, realizing that all we have is all we need if He's leading us. He's leading us down the right actions, the right attitudes, the right paths. And we're going to give glory to Him because He's taken us beside peaceful streams. And you can imagine just how peaceful it is, how quiet it is, and how we can relax and we can find rest. But even in the midst of that, the Good Shepherd hasn't abandoned us in the darkest valleys. Pay attention to this. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. See, the temptation is sometimes is when life is good, then that means God is leading and I'm doing something right. And when life is tough and when I'm being drained by all this, then life must be bad. But understand that these are good things. They're not bad things. Bad things don't have to drain us. It could be good things in life that drain us. The hardships cause us to trust, because if we just fill up this life cup and this life bucket, and if we just let it set and we fill it up, I gave my life to Christ when I was 15 and now I'm 41, and so I filled it up. If there's no movement in this life bucket, what happens to that water if it's just there and it stays there for days and weeks and years? Somebody who has pets outside, tell me what happens. It gets stagnant. Mildew, mold, all this stuff happens. And so it's good that it's being drained. It doesn't mean it's bad, but I have to be intentional to know and be aware that there's going to be things that are going to drain me, and I have to make sure that I'm being filled at the same time. What does your life bucket look like? If you look at this and say, well, man, I've got this covered. I don't have the good stuff coming in. Or you're flipping it around. All you've got coming in is criticism. All you've got coming in is everybody's needing a piece of you all the time. And there's nothing positive, there's nothing uplifting coming in. We can't be any more for God in public than we are in private. You bow your heads with me. God, I thank you so much for life. I thank you so much for perspective. I thank you that we can be content, that we can be more than enough with you. Whatever it is in our life that we feel like is draining us, and however we define that, whatever that looks like, it's going to vary in different seasons of life. Just to realize that some of that stuff doesn't have to be bad. it's just part of life. As I'm realizing I need to be sure that I'm filling my life up with the good, with you, with people who love me, with people who want what's best for me. And God, as we take inventory of that, can we truly say that we're filling our life with the good in life? That we're following the Good Shepherd, that we truly understand and are embracing and living out that the most important thing in our life is our personal relationship with you. We're pouring our energy into that. We're pouring our resources into that. We're pouring our time into that. Because eventually we're going to feel like we're not enough if we're not pursuing you above all else. If you're here today and you don't know Jesus as your personal Savior, you want today to be that day, you feel like your heart is pounding, it's God knocking on the door of your life to say, I want in, I want a part of this, I want to forgive you, I want to live in you and through you. If you want to ask Jesus into your life today, trust Him for salvation, just raise your hand. I'd love to pray with you if that's you today.